All right, let's go to a question from Bryce. What does it mean in 2 Chronicles 32:31 when God left Hezekiah in order to test him and know what was in his heart when God is omniscient?
Well, I think these passages, at least at first blush, are a little bit difficult for us, okay, because of the question that's raised when we read a passage like that. This isn't the only passage. There's a lot of passages like that. Famously, we have Abraham being justified by faith in Genesis 15, all right, and then in Genesis, 22, like 20 years later, after Abraham gives birth to Isaac, his father's Isaac, and then Isaac is offered as a sacrifice, then there is another justification that happens at that time, and some people see that as a contradiction, but really the first is a justification to salvation, counted as righteous, and the second is a justification of a different sort, revealed to be righteous. Okay, and this revealed to be righteous, because the word means two different things, depending on the context. So if I say justify yourself, well, your innocence may not be in question, but I want to know the reasons why you think you're innocent in your justification. So there's an evidential element. And in this context, Genesis 22, God says, now I know that you love me, or something to that effect, or that you're faithful to me. But the knowledge there it seems to be an experiential knowledge. There's one thing where you have a knowledge of a fact, and you have another knowledge of an experience. Okay, so this are two different ways to know something. And so when Abraham knew Sarah, that means he had sexual intercourse with her. Now, he didn't get new information. That's not the point. But there was an intimacy and intimate knowledge. And so sometimes we see the knowledge word used in this regard. What's happening is God is experiencing something through the life of that person that is characterized as knowledge, though the fact of the matter was not lost on God prior to that. So this may be one of those cases. Certainly, there are, not only is it obvious from Scripture that God knows everything, that he's never caught by surprise by anything. This is an ongoing teaching, but there's a kind of a metaphysical necessity to that. If God is a perfect being, okay, he knows everything that can be known. Every fact of every time, of every place kind of thing. And that's the definition, basically, of omniscience. So when we see these kinds of things, then we have to assess what is being communicated here. So God is spirit, must be worshipped in spirit and truth. Jesus says in John 4, obvious, he's not a material being, but he walks with Adam and Eve in the garden. Okay, and he talks with Abraham at the Oaks of Mamre in Genesis 18, so or 17, thereabouts. So there you have these statements about God that aren't literally true. They're anthropomorphisms. They are descriptions of God's behavior in light of language we understand, and they communicate something literally true, but not what seems to appear on face value. God didn't have a body. He wasn't walking around. But he can manifest himself in physical form, so that shouldn't be a problem in the garden or in Genesis with Abraham and in subsequent manifestations of God. So it's kind of an odd thing. We have straightforward declarations about God's nature as it is in itself. And one of those characteristics is omniscience. Then we have other characterizations that seem to be anthropomorphic. In other words, it talks about God like he's a human being. And that's the walking in the garden and different things like that. And so, or he's a bird. It says in the Psalms that God covers us with his pinions. That's the picture of a mother hen stretching out her wings. In fact, I pray that prayer almost daily for protection for our household. But I don't think God's a bird. It's a picture of God's protection. And so that's the point that I'm praying over my family and over our household. And so this is the kind of thing that is going on there. I don't have any reason to suspect that God is not omniscient when a statement like this is made. It's like the angel, go down in that Genesis passage, go down and see what's going on there in the valley, the Jordan Valley, with Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities around them. Well, this wasn't news to God. He didn't need a news report. But this is a characterization of the dynamic there that helps us to understand and to explain the reason for the judgment on those cities. So I guess the suggestion that I have here is we have to navigate based on the plain sense of the passage, unless the plain sense creates other significant problems, and then we navigate based on the foundational theology. So we know, God doesn't have a body, all right, so what's going on here? Well, this is just a manifestation. It's a theophany. It's a manifestation of God in a physical form, though he wasn't actually physical, and that's why he could disappear. Or you've got the angel in the oven with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So there's lots of characterizations. You have a burning bush, so you have a physical manifestation of God's presence, even though God is not physical. So I think that something like this is going on in this passage and passages like it.
And we see this many times in the Bible where somebody's heart is revealed by their actions, because we can say words all the time, anytime, about what we believe, but our actions show what we actually believe and how we're actually living and whether or not we actually trust God. And I'm thinking even about, I think this was, I can't remember if this was said to Zacharias or to Mary, but the idea that Jesus would come and he would reveal what's in men's hearts. Because the way people would respond to Jesus would reveal whether or not they truly loved God, or they were following him for other reasons, or they were trying to appear good for other reasons. So this is kind of something that we see throughout the Bible, where God brings out this proof of somebody's faith, and that glorifies God, and that reveals his heart to everyone. And it might help, even just looking at this one passage, to know where the emphasis is on this passage, because where it comes is the writer is talking about how God gave all these things to Hezekiah, and he blessed him and all these things. And then it says, he left him alone only to test him, that he might know all that was in his heart. And this was in the case where Hezekiah showed all the people from Babylon everything they had in their storehouses.
Bad move.
And he got in trouble. And so
here's where I'm hiding all my gold money, just in case you come by when I'm not looking, you'll know where it is, one of those things.
And I take that to mean perhaps God did not warn him ahead of time. Obviously, Hezekiah didn't ask God if that was the right move before he did it. And so what's interesting here is, for us, maybe this is a little bit off topic of the question, but here you have God blessing him in all these different ways. And the time when he seems silent, he wants to see if Hezekiah still trusts him and goes to him and lives in faith. And so for us, it's a good reminder, just because God's silent, it doesn't mean he's not still for you. He's not still there for you, but this is an opportunity for you to show your faith and trust in a time when you don't feel like his presence is there, or you feel like he is not giving you what you want him to give you. So anyway, that's a little bit off topic of the question, but when you look at what the...
I think there's
go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think it's a fair application there, but I don't think the problem is that he didn't ask God, hey, God, can I show our enemies all the gold in the temple? I think the opportunity, it was just stupid. And so he's a king. He's supposed to be smart. He's supposed to be wise. He's supposed to be shrewd. And instead, his pride got the best of him. And pride goes before a fall. And he fell hard. And so God just let him do that, okay? All of that stuff ended up I'm trying to remember the details, in somebody else's chamber, right? The enemy's chamber. It wasn't Nebuchadnezzar, I don't think. He comes later. But in any event, Hezekiah, it was Assyrians, whoever it was, they got the goodies because Hezekiah showed them where it was at, and that was really stupid. So anyway, I think that's part of it here. God sometimes just let us go to, now, use your own head, just be smart. Don't do something dumb, especially driven by a sinful desire like arrogance or pride.
Right. I was going to say, it's not just dumb. It wasn't that he was ignorant. I think he was being prideful and showing them all these things. And then, of course, it comes back to bite him pretty hard.